Look, we know that, I mean, part of this is a good news story, a genuine good news story, which is that we have seen fewer migrants arriving on boats over the Channel over this last year. The Prime Minister said in January, you know, one of his 5 pledges, I'm going to stop the boats. Now, he didn't say I'm going to cut it by 30%. I think he said I'm going to stop the boats. But we have seen a smaller number of people coming to this country. We're now looking at an estimate, I think, of some 30,000 migrants coming over the whole year, which is a lot less than last year's, and the forecast was a lot less. I think we had 45,000 plus coming last year. But we've also seen a bit of progress on dealing with asylum cases, actually getting those processed. But we still have 41,000 failed asylum seekers who've been processed, awaiting removal. So how bad is the problem still today?
Well, as you know, Julia, I've always been a bit of an optimist. I spent a lot of time working in the Home Office in borders and immigration space, and I am pleased that the numbers are coming down on the boat crossings. That was something not all commentators were saying that was going to happen. It was about double or even treble last year's number. As you say, about 30% down. I don't think that's entirely due to the weather, actually.
I was just going to ask you, actually, is that just the weather? But we actually had some very, very good weather. Or is a lot of it down to the number of Albanians? Now they know they will be sent back after that deal was done.
Well, yes, Julia, thank you. It's not just because of the weather. That has been a factor, but actually there's been a lot of work going on. Yes, Albanian returns are up. Lots of activity on the French side. We have taken out some major gangs working with our colleagues in France. So let's not underestimate the work that's being done, particularly when you place that in context of what's going on of entries into Europe and other parts of the world, Julia. We're not doing quite as badly as some people may think. But nonetheless, yes, the problem, as we've said before, has always been removals. We do need to get back to returning people, not just to Albania, but to other places. And that's been a real problem recently. A number of countries not taking people back again. That's where Rwanda came from. And as you know, we are all waiting now for another hearing to conclude. Yeah. And if that does conclude, then you can bet your bottom dollar immigration enforcement will start putting people on planes to Rwanda, and that will ease the pressure still further.
Yeah, although we know those numbers are going to be very, very small in the early days. Although if it does get the go-ahead, I suppose that I understand there are other countries that say they would look at taking some of those people as well in return for obviously millions of pounds from us. 24th of February is the date we're told. It's been penciled in. I imagine very light pencil in the diaries of the Home Office officials for those first Rwanda flights to start taking place. But in terms of the choice of these 100 hotels, where it's the government is basically going to say, right, we're no longer going to be using these hotels from next March. We don't need them. We've managed to, fewer people have come than we expected. So we booked a load of stuff, hotel rooms that we thought we'd need. We won't need them. But also, we're actually processing people. We're hopeful we're going to get rid of these people. We won't need these hotels. And they're particularly choosing areas like Stoke, other areas where these are red wall seats, seats that where there's big leave voting seats, big concern about legal and illegal migration, and basically saying, a clear message, we're on top of this. We're trying to stop the boats and try to get these people removed from the country. Do you think that would be enough as a signal to people that they're on top of it?
Well, I'm not a politician, Julia, and you and your listeners would
more than most of them.
Views on the decision to move people from selected hotels out of there. My big question has always been, where do they go? Yes, of course, we're going to try and process cases more quickly, get them through the system. But even then, they need to go somewhere, particularly if they're going to be allowed to stay. And what I think the Home Office has struggled with is a number of challenges, Julia, from local MPs, local communities, refugee groups, charities, always lodging some kind of a protest that, refugees are welcome here, but when we say here, we don't actually mean like here. They have to go somewhere. So there is a limited amount of asylum accommodation available in the communities that's been there for over 20 years now, but it's not enough. To house people, they have to go somewhere. Yeah. This government's policy has been clear. They want to put them on RAF camps, on barges, in locations, which is not unusual. That does happen in other European countries, but it's caused a hell of a storm out there with a lot of people who simply oppose that idea as a matter of principle. Yeah. But from a Home Office point of view, they need to put them somewhere, Julia, don't they?
What is the principle opposed? Again, by the way, the 2 RAF camps and the BB Stockholm barge of the Dorset case, that's just like 3 days arrivals, for goodness sake. It doesn't even touch the sides of it. But there is a massive implication. People being put in private rented accommodation, Home Office is paying a fortune for this stuff, well above going rates. I've been talking to people who've been talking to landlords in a lot of these areas. We are looking at hotels again. Fine, you're buying up a whole hotel. People who've got bookings, they're being cancelled. Local businesses really struggling because you haven't got business people or tourists able to use these hotels. And therefore they're not spending money in the local community. There is a big knock-on impact of this, which is just completely ignored by the bleeding hearters who say, oh, well, we need to make sure these people are looked after.
Well, exactly. But accommodation is a problem across the board, Julia, isn't it? That's a housing issue. There's an infrastructure issue. There's a community issue. This goes to the bigger debate about immigration and what we can absorb and what we can't absorb. But from a practitioner point of view, we need to get back to enforcement, and we need to enforce the removal of people. You mentioned 40,000 people that have no right to be here. They've been through the process and they've been told no, but they're still here. That's a real challenge. We need to get back to a place where countries are, let's say, encouraged to take back their own nationals, Julia. And there are levers that could be pulled to encourage countries to do that, but we must get back to removing people again, because without removals, you do not have a credible border. You mentioned Albania. We need to do it with Rwanda. We need to do it with other countries. When will people realise that actually it doesn't follow that once you get in a boat, you'll get to stay here, then they will start slowing down and numbers will happen again if we can do it. But that's a big if. We'll have to wait and see.
It certainly is a big if.